Good morning, everyone. It's Monday, August 23rd, coming to you live from Seoul. I'm Kim Mo-gen. Before we begin, these are the stories we're following at the top of the hour. South Korea extends its highest level of social distancing for another 2 weeks, beginning today. This means restaurants and coffee shops in areas under level 4 measures will have to close by 9 p.m., an hour earlier than under the previous rule. South Korea's chief nuclear envoy No Kyu-duk is to meet his U.S. counterpart Sung Kim in Seoul in the next few minutes. They're likely to discuss ways to manage affairs on the peninsula in a stable manner as North Korea protests the allies' joint military drills. And efforts to evacuate people from Afghanistan continue, with the U.S. claiming more than 28,000 people have been evacuated since August 14th. We'll begin with the COVID-19 situation here in South Korea. The daily caseload has been above the 1,000 mark for more than a month and a half now. And with this, the authorities have again extended the current social distancing measures imposed in the country. To get the whole picture, we have our Kim Do-yeon standing by at the news center for us. Do-yeon, let's begin with today's numbers.
Morgan, South Korea reported on Monday 1,418 new COVID-19 infections, of which all but 48 were locally transmitted. As many know by now, while it's a dip from the day before, Monday numbers are usually lower than other days due to fewer tests done over the weekend. On a positive note, this Monday's number was 137 cases lower than the previous Monday, but with many factors to be taken into account, it's not a clear sign to say it's a downward trend. In fact, tracing is still underway for more than 30% of confirmed cases, so there could be more cluster infections that haven't yet been spotted. And as South Korea still remains in the grip of the virus, health authorities have extended the high social distancing measures for another 2 weeks. This time, some slight changes have been made, which will take effect on Monday until September 5th. Kim Bo-kyung shares us with the details.
As the fourth wave of the pandemic is still not easing, South Korean health authorities decided to extend the highest social distancing measures for another 2 weeks starting Monday until September 5th. The decision means the capital region will remain under the strictest level 4 distancing measures, while the rest of the country stays under level 3, while Daejeon, Busan, and Jeju Island continue with previously implemented level 4 measures. And as case numbers show no sign of decline, additional measures have been introduced. Cafes and restaurants need to close by 9 p.m., an hour earlier than before. Convenience stores are to be treated the same as restaurants, so people cannot eat or drink there after 9 p.m. in level 4 areas or after 10 p.m. in level 3 areas. Meanwhile, private gathering rules will remain the same, with only up to 4 people allowed to meet at cafes and restaurants during the day and 2 people after 6 p.m. in level 4 areas, while places under level 3 will limit the number to 4 regardless of hours. However, with a vaccination incentive reintroduced in level 4 areas, a group of 4 can meet after 6 p.m. if at least 2 in the group are fully vaccinated. Fully vaccinated refers to those who have gotten their shots as advised and waited the 14 days necessary for resistance to form. Those who were vaccinated abroad are not eligible for the incentive. In level 4 areas, all public events and rallies remain banned. A maximum of 49 people can attend weddings, funerals, and academic conferences, and singing rooms along with PC rooms, theme parks, and cram schools have to close by 10 p.m. Those who work in facilities where cluster infections break out often, such as indoor gym facilities, bathhouses, and department stores, should get a PCR test once every 2 weeks. Spectators won't be allowed for all sports games, while large religious facilities with over 100 worshippers are allowed to open 10% of the seats available during services, but limited only up to 99 people at most. Kim Bo-kyung, Arirang News.
Do-yeon, let's now talk about the vaccination drive. Where is South Korea in terms of vaccinations?
Morgan, sailors as well as inmates at correctional facilities will start to get their COVID-19 jabs on Monday. The jabs are going to be the Janssen vaccine, as it only requires 1 dose for recipients to be considered fully vaccinated, and sailors and prisoners need prompt inoculation as they are more exposed to outbreaks given the conditions they are under. The Janssen, however, is only available for those aged 30 or above, so younger members of these groups will receive one of the mRNA vaccines. This comes as last week a second batch of Janssen vaccines from the U.S. was delivered to South Korea, around 400,000 doses. Speaking of supplies, more Moderna doses are due to arrive today at 2:20 p.m. as well. About 1 million doses will arrive at Incheon International Airport, with the remaining 6 million starting to arrive the following week, continuing until early September. This is good news for health authorities, as in just 3 days, inoculation of people from 18 to 49 starts, the biggest age group for the vaccination drive so far. As for the status, 26 million of those eligible in the country received at least their first dose, and the goal is to have that number reach 36 million by the Chuseok holidays, Korean Thanksgiving, which comes in late September. With the COVID-19 vaccine reservation system now active for people aged 18 and 49 in the country, the reservation rate is much lower than what was seen for older age groups. However, experts stress this is not just limited to South Korea, saying it's a trend seen around the world. Choi Won-jung reports.
COVID-19 vaccination booking rates are low among younger people all across the world, making health authorities worried about whether they can achieve herd immunity. One expert believes complacency could be one of the reasons behind the low rates of vaccination.
Well, I think maybe that distrust is more like complacency, because last year, in the first phase of the pandemic, young people tended not to be affected severely. So very few young people ended up in hospital, let alone dying. But this year, we're seeing a lot of young people getting infected, and that's just about every country in the world.
In South Korea, in the 18 to 49 age group, around 23% of people have said no to the vaccines. And even if more young people were interested in getting vaccinated, the current vaccine supply shortage is also making it difficult to reach 70% threshold for herd immunity. Rather, some experts think non-pharmaceutical methods will be more effective at containing the virus.
So we need to focus much more on the quarantine and isolation through the tracing and testing. However, increased prevalence need more human resources to work appropriately, unless digital technology helps them to reduce the work time. So it is now time for refocusing on the K-quarantine, especially for quarantine and isolation method, by increasing the human resources rapidly.
They also said reaching a 70% vaccination rate will not be enough to allow the easing of restrictions and opening of borders, nor is it enough to avoid fresh outbreaks.
Iceland has the highest vaccination rate in the world. So it's well over 80%, and more than 90% of people over the age of 70 have been fully vaccinated. And yet Iceland is having the largest outbreak since the beginning of the pandemic.
However, he stressed that while vaccination might not stop the spread, they can still prevent many from being hospitalized or dying. Choi Won-jung, Arirang News.
South Korea's chief nuclear envoy No Kyu-duk is meeting his U.S. counterpart Sung Kim in Seoul this morning. They're expected to discuss ways to manage affairs on the peninsula in a stable way as North Korea protests the allies' joint military drills. The agenda may also include the issue of providing the North with humanitarian aid. The U.S. envoy is set to have a separate meeting on Monday with his Russian counterpart Igor Morgulov, who is also in Seoul. Morgulov will also meet senior South Korean diplomats in the afternoon to discuss bilateral issues before meeting with No on Tuesday. The Chinese People's Liberation Army Rocket Force has conducted live fire drills in the desert of northwest China, including 2 new type conventional short-range missiles. According to China's state-run CCTV Saturday, the missiles successfully hit targets armed with multi-layered defense system hundreds of kilometers away, while effectively paralyzing key communication facilities. The report added that the new missile is capable of breaking through complex electromagnetic interference to destroy enemy communication systems. Watchers say the detailed reports of the new missile by China is a deterrent aimed not just at Taiwan, but also the U.S. and Japan. Well, no one knows for sure what will happen to Afghanistan following the swift takeover by the Taliban. The militant group claims it will form what it describes as an inclusive new government. Kim Hyo-sun has the story.
A week after the Taliban swept into Afghanistan's capital after seizing control of the whole country, the militant group now claims it had no plans to take over Kabul. In an interview with Al Jazeera on Sunday, a senior member of the group said the Taliban initially wished to reach a political solution and to form a joint and inclusive government. He added that as the U.S. pulled out, it left them no other choice but to enter and take over security in the city. On the issue of forming a new government, the representative said consultations are underway, stressing it's going to be an inclusive system. He added the talks include whether to keep Kabul as the capital or to move it to the Taliban's birthplace of Kandahar. Reuters also reports that the Taliban will possibly unveil a blueprint for the new government in the coming weeks. Citing the group's spokesman, the report says the Taliban aims to meet with leaders of some 20 of Afghanistan's 34 provinces over the next several days to ensure their safety and seek cooperation. The spokesman also stressed that schools and colleges across the country can open. Amid the intensifying chaos across Afghanistan, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken said on CBS on Sunday that Afghanistan's ex-president Ashraf Ghani fled the country just a day after the two were on the phone, where he vowed to fight to the death against a militant group. U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin said in a separate interview that nobody predicted the Afghan government would fall in just 11 days. He also said previous assessments stated it could take several months or even 1 or 2 years before the Afghan government fell. Austin also said the U.S. saw the Afghan military surrendering and, quote, evaporating as the Taliban began to gain ground. Kim Hyo-sun, Arirang News.
People are still scrambling to get out of Kabul, where the Taliban has taken over. At least 20 people have died in the chaos as the U.S. continues its evacuation of Americans and allies, airlifting thousands daily. For more on the evacuation efforts, here's our Kim Hyun-sin.
Chaos in Kabul, a week after the Taliban took over the capital of Afghanistan. Crowds of people are outside the city's Karzai airport, trying to get on a flight to escape the Taliban. A NATO official says that at least 20 people have been killed while trying to escape. The U.S. is working to pull all Americans out of the country. But the promised deadline of August 31st is approaching, and several thousand Americans are still trapped in the country along with Afghans trying to flee. Thousands are being airlifted out of Afghanistan daily, with the U.S. successfully evacuating 11,000 people in the past 36 hours. Non-military charter planes have joined in the effort, and the U.S. has ordered commercial airplanes to join in the rescue plans to increase the evacuation capacity. Planes taking off from Kabul won't directly land in the United States. Rather, they're headed to U.S. military bases and transit centers around the world, where evacuees will go through a screening process.
Once screened and cleared, we will welcome these Afghans who helped us in the war effort over the last 20 years to their new home in the United States of America, because that's who we are. That's what America is.
Currently, a tent city for evacuees is being built at a base in New Jersey, while overseas American military bases, including ones in South Korea, Japan, Germany, Kosovo, Bahrain, and Italy, are also being eyed as potential housing sites for the evacuees. But top U.S. officials fear that terrorists from Islamic State group could pose a threat to Americans and Afghans at Kabul airport. President Biden's national security advisor Jake Sullivan told CNN on Sunday that this threat is real, acute, and persistent. Although Biden refuses to delve into tactical operations with the public, U.S. officials say that the military has been thinking of creative ways to widen the pathway for Americans who are having a difficult time reaching the airport. Kim Hyun-sun, Arirang News.
G7 leaders will discuss the crisis in Afghanistan on Tuesday following the Taliban's takeover of the country. British Prime Minister Boris Johnson tweeted Sunday that international cooperation is vital to ensure safe evacuations, prevent a humanitarian crisis, and to support the Afghan people. The UK is the current chair of the Group of Seven, which includes the US, Canada, Germany, and Japan. Following their previous virtual meeting last Thursday, G7 foreign ministers urged the Taliban to provide safe passage for those trying to escape Kabul. South Korea's exports for the first 20 days of August have increased by around 41% on year. According to Korea Customs Service Monday, over $32 billion of exports were recorded from August 1st to 20th. Exports of semiconductors were up roughly 40%, and steel was up 57%. Shipments to the U.S. and Japan both saw a roughly 50% jump compared to the previous year. South Korea's exports have been increasing on year for 10 months in a row. Commuters will now have to bring cards to ride buses in Seoul City. Seoul's Metropolitan City government announced the test operation on Sunday, which will see them get rid of fare boxes from buses starting October. Fare boxes on 171 buses across 8 lines will be removed until March next year. That's around 2.4% of the total number of buses running in the city. The city will install mobile QR codes at stations, which will allow travelers to get their digital bus cards. Officials expect the measure to reduce the risk of virus infections through cash transactions and improve traffic safety, as drivers would no longer need to manage the boxes. They will review the results before deciding whether to fully adopt the all-digital fare system. Climate change presents a variety of challenges to farmers, and one being new species of pests. South Korea has been monitoring closely for their emergence, which is a labor-intensive task. However, thankfully, researchers have developed a way to remotely check for them and trap them, as our Ian Zin reports.
At this tomato farm, the leaves on some of the plants have been damaged by pests. There's a tiny insect on the back of the leaf, only visible if you look closely. Insect traps have been set up throughout the farm. Looking at the pests that have been caught by the traps helps identify which bugs are causing the damage. Some of the insect traps have a solar-powered device attached. These traps hold 40 adhesive strips that are automatically replaced. This allows farmers to leave the traps for up to 9 months, saving them time and effort. Also attached to the devices are high-resolution cameras that send images of the pests to the farmers' mobile phones or computers.
I can predict the pest attacks, so I can make a plan to take control of the pest situation in advance. I feel free from the fear of pests.
Test results of this new automatic pest predicting trap developed by the Rural Development Administration show they reduce labor and other costs by 60% compared to traditional traps. It is also significantly more effective because not only can different traps be installed depending on the cultivation crop and environment, but adjustments and monitoring can be done remotely.
The pest attacks can be forecasted and controlled remotely. This kind of monitoring allows smart farming on islands or remote areas through an agricultural network in the metropolitan cities.
Climate change is bringing more foreign or exotic pests to Korea, like the American fairy bug and brown cicadas. Effective pest prevention systems are needed to make sure these new pests don't destroy crops. 이은진, 아리랑 뉴스.
Let's take a look at what's going on in the world now. We start off in the United States, where the Big Apple was slammed by a big storm, seeing record rainfall over the weekend. With Tropical Storm Henry bearing towards the New York area, the National Weather Service said Central Park experienced over 49 millimeters of rainfall between 10 p.m. and 11 p.m. Saturday, the most ever recorded in the city in a single hour since it began tracking such data more than 150 years ago. With more than 100 millimeters of rain being dumped on Saturday night, New York City scrambled to call off its homecoming concert, already underway in Central Park. Tropical Storm Henry also forced New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio to declare a state of emergency, calling on New Yorkers to stay indoors where possible. All outdoor dining has been suspended through Monday morning, and city beaches have also been closed until Monday. Henry, which was earlier downgraded from hurricane to tropical storm, made landfall on the coast of Rhode Island on Sunday afternoon. Over in China, the National People's Congress formally revised its laws to allow couples to now have up to 3 children in order to boost its birth rate. China announced back in May that it would ease its strict childbirth policy, but the decision has been formally passed into law, along with several resolutions aimed at boosting the birth rate and reducing the burden of raising a child. Some of the changes include canceling the social maintenance fee, a fine couples had to pay for having children beyond the limit, encouraging local governments to offer parental leave, increasing women's employment rights, as well as improving childcare infrastructures. The latest move comes as recent census data showed a steep decline in the birth rate. In 2016, China scrapped its decades-old one-child policy, replacing it with a 2-child limit, but that failed to increase the birth rate. Research also revealed that the cost of raising children in cities has deterred many Chinese couples from having kids. And finally, over to France, where the remains of American-born singer and dancer Josephine Baker will be reinterred at the Pantheon Monument in Paris, making her the first black woman to get the country's highest honor. The entertainer, who's also a World War II hero in France, passed away in 1975 and was buried in Monaco, dressed in a French military uniform, along with the medals she received for her role as part of the French resistance during the war. Baker will be the 5th woman to be honored with a Pantheon burial and the first entertainer. The monument in Paris houses the remains of scientist Marie Curie, French philosopher Voltaire, writer Victor Hugo, and other French luminaries. 이승재, Arirang News.
Good morning. South Korea is on high alert as the 12th typhoon of the season, Omise, is heading towards the nation's south coast. It will come close to Jeju at around 9 p.m. tonight and make a landfall on Korea's south coast by midnight. The typhoon will bring heavy rain and violent winds to southern parts of Korea into tomorrow. Winds will be strong enough to shatter windows and blow off signboards, so please be extra careful. It will bucket down with rain from this afternoon into tomorrow night, especially in 전라남도, 경상남도, and Jeju Island, seeing 70 millimeters an hour with total expected rain of up to 400 millimeters in those places. So typhoon alerts have issued for offshore waters of the south of Jeju this morning, but will be expanded to land and seas in and around the southern provinces as the day goes on, with heavy rain, high wind, and wave advisories. A raincoat should be the best option, as an umbrella will not withstand the weather conditions. And afternoon readings will be similar to lower than Sunday afternoon. That's Korea for you, and here's a look at the weather conditions around the world.
And that will do it for us at this hour on Arirang News. We'll be back at noon Korea time, so stay tuned. Thank you for watching and goodbye.